Greetings, fellow leaders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Welcome to section 4 of our Master Guide course. In section 1, we looked at the Christian Church through the ages. Section 2, we looked at heralds of the Advent message. Section 3, we looked at the birth of the Remnant Church. Then, similar to section 3, section 4 is the Remnant Church organized. And the time period we're going to look at is between 1853 to 1863. Okay? Now, you should take note that the Seventh-day Adventist Church did not come out of the 1844 movement with a structure and corporate identity. A few of the components or steps are listed as we follow the move towards the organization. Okay, so the steps or components towards organization. The first one was the identity card issued. Issuance of what? Identity cards. Identity card issued. Now, this was an initial step towards church organization and was the need to identify the preachers. The need to identify the preachers. Those who believe in the advent of Christ, in the second coming of Jesus Christ, and those who carried the Sabbath truth. Okay? Seventh-day Sabbath keepers. Seventh-day Adventist. All right? So it was decided that the identification cards would be issued and signed by the leading brethren, thus certifying the validity of the doctrines presented by the carrier. I've already explained, I think, about this point. Okay? Now, this procedure was introduced, in 1853, the forerunner of credentials. Okay? The second point under organization of the Remnant Church, evangelistic tents and Sabbaths, Sabbath schools. Evangelistic tents and Sabbath schools. Now, during the summer of 1853, Elder John Navis Loughborough and Amy Carnell were sent out at the expense of the Battle Creek Church to travel in 3 adjacent. They became the first to have a travel budget. The following summer, they raised the necessary $200 to purchase a 600-foot secular tent, and on June 10th, 1854, held the first ever tent meeting among the Seventh-day Adventists. Let's hope we are following. Now, the year 1853 also saw the development of the embryoic structure with the formation of the regular Sabbath schools in Rochester and the Bucksbridge. Okay, New York. The idea had been introduced the year before with a novel series of Sabbath school lessons printed in the new magazine called The Youth Instructor. The Youth Instructor was written by James White in 1852. Okay? Let's go to the third point under organization of the Remnant Church. The move to Battle Creek. In the new location, the press was kept busy printing the Review and Herald. By the way, Battle Creek is a city in Michigan. So the Youth Instructor, in the new location in the Battle Creek, the press was kept busy printing Review and Heralds, the Youth Instructor, Temperance, and evangelistic tracts, and an increasing load of all sorts. Uriah Smith, who had joined the movement 2 years earlier, was appointed editor, and writers included the Andrews, J.N. Andrews, James White, Wagner, Cottrell, and Pierce. The first issue, volume 7, number 10 of the review in its new home was what dated December 4th, 1855. The fourth point that we need to take note on Remnant organization of Remnant Church were the early publications. Now, we are told that in 1849, a group of Sabbath-keeping Adventists had begun to publish a paper called The Present What? The Present Truth. In 1850, they also had published six issues of the Advent Review. In November of that year, these two papers had made under the name Second Advent Review and Sabbath Herald, which today is simply the Adventist Review. Today is known as the what? Adventist Review. This is the general church paper and contains news of activities of the church around the world, as well as devotional and doctrinal articles. This paper is now the what? Adventist World. Okay? Adventist World. Take note of this point. Adventist World. The second point here I've already explained. In the first point, the youth instructor began in 1852 by James White. Today, the church publishes the Insight, Guide, Primary Treasure, Our Little Friend, and Sabbath School Lessons Coteries for all age For all age groups. Okay. Now, another point that we need to take note under organization of the Remnant Church is the opposition to organization. This first one is a good point. At first, the mere mention of the word organization would bring very strong feelings and vocal negative opinions. The fact that many had been disfellowshipped from their previous churches had turned folk strongly against any form church structure. However, as the movement grew in numbers and spread out geographically, it became more evident that church organization was becoming essential to safeguard against confusion and the fanaticism. Are we together? Now, another point under church organization that we need to take note, which is very, very important also, is the early church finance. In the 1850s, those who preached the Advent message relied on the generosity of their listeners. A group under the leadership of John Nevis Andrews searched the scriptures to find God's method for the support of the ministry. The resulting recommendation was the systematic benevolence. The initial plan adopted called for each member to give annually at least 1% of all personal property free of what? Debt. In addition to weekly free will offerings. Now, in 1853, James White suggested that so now take note that it was James White who suggested. James White suggested that the tracts to be sold. Okay? To be sold. Then the price was set at 35 cents by Elder John Navis, John Norton Loughborough. And in 1854, the review was what? The review was offered by subscription and the price of $1 per year payable in what? In advance. Now, the last point under organization of the Remnant Church is this one. Vote to organize. Vote to organize. The Michigan Conference met and invited all other state conferences to meet in a general conference in the spring of 1860 what? In 1863. At this conference, meeting, a general conference constitutional committee was appointed. A state conference constitutional committee was what? Was named. Then John Byington became the first general president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, was elected as the first general president. This is very, very important, my good leaders. Okay, so we've looked at the organization of the Remnant Church, or the Remnant Church organized between 1853 to 1863. Okay, so this is the end of section what? Section 4. Okay. Greetings, fellow leaders, master guides in training. We've covered section 1 to section 4, and in this tutorial or in this lecture, we're going to look at section what? Section 5. And section 5 is about expansion and reform. The time period is 1864 to 1873. Remember, section 1, we looked at the birth of the church, Christian church through the ages. Section 2, we looked at the heralds of the Advent message. Section 3, we looked at the birth of the Remnant Church. Section 4, we looked at the Remnant Church organized, or the organization of the Remnant Church. And section 5 of we will look at expansion and reform. Now, expansion and reform, there are main points that you need to take note. Very important points. Point number 1, obstacles to overcome. Now, when the Seventh-day Adventist Church was organized, or the Remnant Church was organized, it was now after organization of the Remnant Church, the American Civil War was in full swing. Okay, between 1861 to 1865. Okay, precisely at the same time. Military service and normal disruption created by the warfare were major issues to deal with, while attempting to keep the focus on the mission of the Remnant Church. On the mission of the Remnant Church. One of the first immediate benefits appeared when the United States granted non-combatant status to the members. This is very important. The non-combatant status was granted in 1864. Okay, that is the first point, obstacles to overcome. The second point is a call to go west. A call to go west. A Macedonic call came from 14 members living in the far west. Elder John J.N. Loughborough and D.T. Bodu were appointed to go to the west coast in 1868. The whites visited the Pacific coast in 1872. The whites means James White and the wife Ellen and his wife Ellen White. Okay. The third point, expanded publications. Now, Health Reformer appeared as the church's first health journal in 1866. This is a point. Health Reformer appeared as the church's first health journal in 1866. Point number 4. Health institutions established. Health institutions established. Okay? Now, I want you to understand this, my good friends and fellow leaders. As a direct result of a second vision on the health received by Ellen White, in 1866, the Western Health Reform Institute was opened as the first health institution of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in 1860 what? 1866. It was as a result of a direct result of a second vision of Ellen G. White on health. Later, it became known as the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Battle Creek Sanitarium. It was paid for by personal pledges. James White and J.P. Kellogg, John Kellogg, gave $500 each. Dr. Kate Lindsay helped start a school of medicine at the Battle Creek in 1883. This is a point as well. Now let's look at the school. Sporadic efforts had been made to establish church schools as early as 1853, possibly. The first of the schools was sponsored by John Byington. John Byington, the first general president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, with his daughter Martha as a teacher. The first official Seventh-day Adventist school anywhere in the world began in 1872 at Battle Creek by Goodloe H. Bell. By Goodloe H. Bell, who was the born teacher. Now, we have another point. Camp meeting launched. In 1868, the first Seventh-day Adventist camp meeting was held on a farm in Michigan with 2,000 in attendance. 2,000, not 20,000, 2,000 in attendance. In 1863. In 1878, 20,000 attended the camp meeting near Boston. Now, from 1868 to 1878, that is 10 years. So a decade later, 20,000 attended the camp meeting. Today, these special meetings are held in many parts of the world, with some of the largest being held in East Africa. Okay. All right. So another important point that you should take note is the Sabbath schools started. The first Sabbath school lessons appeared in the Youth Instructor in 1853, written by James White. This point was already explained in the previous chapter section. And Goodloe H. Bell, the born teacher, prepared 2 series of lessons from Sabbath school in 1869. The next year, a simple programming format was added, and the Sabbath school was on its way. The first Sabbath school gifts to mission were sent to Australia in 1885 and Africa in 1887. This is a point. This is very, very important. The first Sabbath school gifts to missions were sent to Australia in 1885 and Africa in 1887. Later, a ship, the Pitcairn, was sent to the South Pacific, taking missionaries to many islands. Okay. Last point under section 5. Stephen N. Haskell organized a tract So we are looking at the point we are looking at under the heading Tract Society formed. Stefan N. Haskell organized a tract and missionary society which later led to the Kaupota ministry and personal ministry. Okay. Now, someone may ask, what is Kaupota ministry? Now, Kaupota ministry, this is selling of books. We call this ministry now as literature evangelism. Literature, those who sell books are called literature evangelists. Literature evangelists. This marks the end of section 5. Now, in section 6, we're going to look at the worldwide vision. The worldwide vision, the time period is between 1874 to 1878. Okay? So let's hope you are studying, guys.